welcome back to Storytime. I'm going to move this over here. This will eventually have, for my wrapping stream tomorrow, this is where I'm going to have my little, what's it called? Slideshow of cat pictures and the like. But for right now, this is where my little Storytime Sunny logo is going to go. As you can see, I am almost finished with this picture. I just have to fill in, color all of the rest of the presents, and then put the names of people on the nice list, on the stockings, and on the presents. We're so close. But I'm hoping by tomorrow to have it all finished. So I'm not really sure how long this story time or the next one is going to be. This and the next one are going to be sort of assorted random Christmas stories by Charles Dickens. Hey, Kickin'! How are you doing? Good to see you again. I'm feeling spoiled. I get to see you so much now, this last week or two. Are you on holiday? Oh, I should have my little, maybe I'll have my cat reel up while I'm chatting with you guys. And then I'll make the cat reel go away when I start. Yeah, it's going well. I was up very, very late, just kind of trying to de-stress, because earlier this week was pretty stressful trying to find some place that will test people who aren't showing symptoms, anything like that. Everybody's like, no, we're only testing people with symptoms, and there's like one place that is testing non-symptomatic people, and of course they're booked like far, far in advance. The soonest I could get was next Monday, and of course I'm thinking the store is just like, because I work in a retail store, the store is just, they're down one person until I can get tested and get the results back. Oh yeah, oh, thank you so much. Oh, I'm so glad. That's one of the reasons I was hoping, I had at this time, was because you get home from work and you just want to de-stress, and why not listen to a story? And then in your time zone, it's getting ready for bed, bedtime story. Perfect. By the way, have you tested out, obviously, bedtime streams? Because he is your time zone, and I think he does his streams what would be like when you're waking up, thereabouts. So... Oh, hey, Mr. Brightside, thank you so much for the bits. Of course, you are going to have your name on the nice list. Look at all of this progress we made yesterday. It was a 6-hour stream yesterday, which I think is my, I think that's a record for me. Like, all one thing. And hi, John, how are you doing? Always wonderful to see all of you, and enjoy your lurk. Yeah. My bedtime stories. So I'm looking at this book. It's a really pretty edition. Signet Classics does some really nice editions of classic stories. They do all public domain. And they are, when I'm looking for a classic book, I will try them first, Signet, then Bantam. And yeah, the time just kind of flew by. I've noticed, like, in the past, when I get into a sort of artwork like this, I'll just completely, only focus on the drawing. And of course, I was chatting with all of you, I had so much fun with that. This picture's hard to see, Maestro cuddled up with what used to be his little stuffed animal. He doesn't really care about it right now. It kind of blew me away when I realized it was 10 o'clock and I was still streaming. But I had a good time. And I think that was exactly what I needed because earlier that day I was pretty stressed out. Anyways, I think I am going to. Oh yeah, I was talking about shopping for classics. So if you're ever looking for a classic book, I think that these might be the same in like the UK and on Australia. But my first choice is Signet, then Bantam, then let's see, Dover. That's right. So they do a really nice, inexpensive, mass market sized editions of classic books, and they're pretty reliable. They are Dover themselves is their own publisher, but Bantam and Signet are both under Random House, which, well, Penguin Random House, because Bantam was part of Penguin, and then and then Random House and Penguin merged, and so now they're like the big book publishing house with a whole bunch of imprints. Oh, okay, the Lost Mines of Phandelver module. Oh, wonderful. I hope you have a good time. And, of course, I'm looking forward to seeing your MIDI when it comes in. Did you get the playlist that I posted up on our Discord in the games thing? It was, what was it called again? I'm going to look right now. Painters Guild, that's right. So my sister remembered it, as I knew she would. She usually does. But even if you don't watch it to learn how to paint minis, it's still a lot of fun to watch. I know. This year has gone by very strangely. It is both, it's already Christmas and it's only Christmas because so much has happened. Especially when, I've been working right along because even though we couldn't allow customers into the store was still doing business because we were doing curbside pickup. So, and it was just this weird sort of limbo thing because we didn't have all of the lights on and everything. So, yeah. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we will hide the little, oh, look at little Maestro, kitten Maestro. And now he's bigger than Stockings. Oh, thank you so much for the bits, the corgi bits. I love the corgi bits. How are you doing, Corel? Lovely to see you as always. Look at all of this progress we made by the end of the stream yesterday. I did 3 more presents because I had filled in the blue one, I think right before. Oh, okay, nice long sleeve. That's awesome. Oh, wow, nice. Yeah, so all I have to do is 4 more presents, then I'm putting names on the nice list. So, of course, that's going to be Corel, UK, Wholesome, Mr. Brightside. And then for Stockings, we have, I think, obviously Bedtime, Mr. Brightside, and UK just subbed yesterday, which was exciting. So they're going on the Stockings, and then Presents is Mr. Brightside. So I am hoping to finish that up tonight, so when we do the wrapping stream tomorrow at 3, so we're, off by an hour from what we usually do, Kick and I will send you off to sleep tomorrow with some wrapping paper goodness. And that's going to be fun. 100,000 cousins. I don't have nearly that many. All right. So, yeah, that seems like a long sleep. I am glad because, yeah, I hope you slept well. All right. We're going to hide our little reel of cat and kitten pictures. So the first story that we were reading is A Christmas Tree, and it is from Reprinted Pieces, and I'm not really sure what that means. Either that's a publication. Yes, paper ASMR. It's my first actual ASMR stream, so that'll be fun. So either Reprinted Pieces is like the title of a collection, or it's just like from reprinted pieces of stuff. Oh, okay, I gotcha. Had a little rest between sleeps, or rest between sleeps. Well, I guess you could say that. All right. So, A Christmas Tree. I've been looking on this evening at a merry company of children assembled round that pretty German toy, a Christmas tree. The tree was planted in the middle of a great round table and towered high above their heads. It was brilliantly lighted by a multitude of little tapers, and everywhere sparkled and glittered with bright objects. There were rosy-cheeked dolls hiding behind the green leaves. There were real watches, with movable hands at least, and an endless capacity of being wound up, dangling from innumerable twigs. There were French polished tables, chairs, bedsteads, wardrobes, 8-day clocks, and various other articles of domestic furniture, wonderfully made in tin at Wolverhampton, perched among the boughs as if in preparation for some fairy housekeeping. There were jolly, broad-faced little men, much more agreeable in appearance than many real men, and no wonder, for their heads took off and showed them to be full of sugar plums. There were fiddles and drums, there were tambourines, books, work boxes, paint boxes, sweetmeat boxes, peep show boxes, all kinds of boxes. I think their idea of a peep show is different, but I'm not sure. There were trinkets for the elder girls, far brighter than any grown-up gold and jewels. There were baskets and pin cushions and all devices. There were guns, swords, and banners. There were witches standing in enchanted rings of pasteboard to tell fortunes. There were teetotums, humming tops, needle cases, pen wipers, smelling bottles, conversation cards, bouquet holders, real fruit made artificially dazzling with gold leaf, imitation apples, pears, and walnuts, crammed with surprises. In short, as a pretty child before me delightedly whispered to another pretty child, her bosom friend, there was everything and more. This motley collection of odd objects clustered on the tree like magic fruit, and flashing back the bright looks directed towards it from every side. Some of the diamond eyes admiring it were hardly on a level with the table, and a few were languishing in timid wonder on the bosoms of pretty mothers, aunts, and nurses, made a lively realization of the fancies of childhood, and set me thinking how all the trees that grow and all the things that come into existence on the earth have their wild adornments at that well-remembered time. Being now at home again, and alone, the only person in the house awake, my thoughts are drawn back by a fascination which I do not care to resist, to my own childhood. I begin to consider what do we all remember best upon the branches of the Christmas tree of her own young Christmas days, by which we climbed to real life. Straight in the middle of the room, cramped in the freedom of its growth by no encircling walls or soon-reached ceiling, a shadowy tree arises, and, looking up into the dreamy brightness of its top, for I observe in this tree the singular property that it appears to grow downwards towards the earth, I look into my youngest Christmas recollections. All toys at first, I find. Up yonder, among the green holly and red berries, is the tumbler, with its hands in its pocket, who wouldn't lie down, but whenever he was put upon the floor, persisted in rolling his fat body about until he rolled himself still, and brought those lobster eyes of his to bear upon me, when I affected to laugh very much, but in my heart of hearts was extremely doubtful of him. Close behind him is that infernal snuff-box out of which there sprang a demoniacal counselor in a black gown with an obnoxious head of hair and a red cloth mouth, open wide, who was not to be endured on any terms, but could not be put away either, for he used suddenly, in a highly magnified state, to fly out of mammoth snuff-boxes in dreams when least expected. Nor is the frog with cobbler's wax on his tail far off, for there is no knowing where he wouldn't jump, and when he flew over the candle and came upon one's hand with that spotted back, red on green ground, he was horrible. The cardboard lady in a blue silk skirt, who was stood up against the candlestick to dance, and whom I see on this same branch, was milder, and was beautiful, but I can't say as much for the larger cardboard man, he who used to be hung against the wall and pulled by a string. There was a sinister expression on that nose of his, and when he got his legs round his neck, which he very often did, he was ghastly and not a creature to be alone with. When did that dreadful mask first look at me? Who put it on, and why was I so frightened that the sight of it is an era in my life? It is not a hideous it is not a hideous visage in itself. It is even meant to be a droll. Why then were its stolid features so intolerable? Surely not because it hid the wearer's face. An apron would have done as much, and though I should have preferred even the apron away, it would not have been absolutely insupportable like the mask. Was it the immovability of the mask? The doll's face was immovable, but I was not afraid of her. Perhaps that fixed and set change coming over a real face infused into my quickened heart some remote suggestion and dread of the universal change that is to come on every face and make it still. Nothing reconciled me to it, no drummers from whom proceeded a melancholy chirping on the turning of a handle, no regiment of soldiers with a mute band taken out of a box and fitted one by one upon a stiff and lazy little set of lazy tongues. No old woman, made of wires and a brown paper composition, cutting up a pie for 2 small children, could give me a permanent comfort for a long time. Nor was it any satisfaction to be shown the mask and see that it was made of paper, or to have it locked up and be assured that no one wore it. The mere recollection of that fixed face, the mere knowledge of its existence anywhere, was sufficient to wake me in the night, all perspiration and horror, with, "Oh, I know it's coming! Oh, the mask!" I kind of felt that way about a big, not dummy, but like well, it's hard to say. It's not really a statue, it's not really a dummy, but it was something that my boss made, and we called it Jack Frost, and it is haunting and has always bothered me. I never wondered what the dear old donkey with the panniers, there he is, was made of then. His hide was real to the touch, I recollect, and the great black horse with the round red spots all over him, the horse that I could even get upon, I never wondered what had brought him to that strange condition, or thought that such a horse was not commonly seen at Newmarket. The 4 horses of no color next to him that went into the wagon of cheeses and could be taken out and stabled under the piano appeared to have bits of fur tippet for their tails and other bits for their manes, and to stand on pegs instead of legs, but it was not so when they were brought home for a Christmas present. They were all right then, neither was their harness unceremoniously nailed into their chests, as appears to be the case now. The tinkling works of the music cart I did find out to be made of quill toothpicks and wire, and I always thought that little tumbler in his shirt sleeves, perpetually swarming up one side of the wooden frame and coming down head foremost on the other, rather a weak-minded person, though good-natured. But the Jacob's ladder next to him, made of little squares of red wood that went flapping and clattering over one another, each developed a different picture, and the whole enlivened by small bells, was a mighty marvel and a great delight. Ah, the doll's house, of which I was not proprietor, but where I visited. I don't admire the Houses of Parliament half so much as that stone-fronted mansion with real glass windows and doorsteps and a real balcony, greener than I ever see now, except at watering places, and even they afford but a poor imitation. And though it did open all at once, the entire front house, which was a blow, I admit, as cancelling the fiction of a staircase, it was but to shut it up again, and I could believe. Even open, there were 3 distinct rooms in it, a sitting room and bedroom, elegantly furnished, and, best of all, a kitchen with uncommonly soft fire irons, a plentiful assortment of diminutive utensils. Oh, the warming pan. And a warming pan, by the way, is, it looks like a skillet and it has a lid on it. And they would put hot coals in the warming pan, close it up, and sometimes like they'd have incense in it to make it smell pleasant as opposed to smoky. And then they would put the warming pan into like where your feet would go in bed to warm it up. So when you get into bed, you're not going, God, my feet are cold, I can't get to sleep. It would be nice and warm and pleasant and ready for you. So, yeah, that's what a warming pan is. Oh, nice. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself kicking. Let's see. Oh, the warming pan. And a tin man cook in profile, who was always going to fry 2 fish. That Barmecide justice. What Barmecide justice have I done to the noble feasts wherein the set of wooden platters figured, each with its own peculiar delicacy, as a ham or turkey glued tight onto it, and garnished with something green, which I recollect as moss. Could all the temperance societies of those later days united give me such a tea-drinking as I have had through the means of yonder little set of blue crockery, which really would hold liquid, it ran out of the small wooden cask, I recollect, and tasted of matches, and which made tea, nectar. And if the 2 legs of the ineffectual little sugar tongs did tumble over one another and want purpose, like Punch's hands, what does it matter? And if I did once shriek out as a poisoned child, and strike the fashionable company with consternation, by reason of having drunk a little teaspoon inadvertently dissolved in hot tea, I was never the worse for it, except by a powder. Upon the next branches of the tree, lower down, hard by the green roller and miniature gardening tools, how thick the books began to hang. Thin books in themselves at first, but many of them, and with deliciously smart covers of bright red or green. What fat black letters to begin with. A was an anchor, and shot at a frog. Of course he was. Oh, Archer. Of course he was. He was an apple pie also, and there he is. He was a good many things in his time, was A, and so were most of his friends except X, who had so little versatility, and I never knew him to get beyond Xerxes and Xantippe, like Y, who was always confined to a yacht or a yew tree, and Z contemned forever to be a zebra or a zany. But now the very tree itself changes and becomes a beanstalk, the marvelous beanstalk up which Jack climbed to the giant's house. And now those dreadfully interesting double-headed giants with their clubs over their shoulders begin to stride along the boughs in a perfect throng, dragging knights and ladies home for dinner by the hair of their heads. And Jack, how noble with his sword of sharpness and his shoes of swiftness! Again those old meditations come back upon me as I gaze up at as I gaze up at him, and I debate within myself whether there was more than one Jack, which I am loth, I suppose it was supposed to be loath, there was no E, which I am loth to believe possible, or only one genuine, original, admirable Jack, who achieved all the recorded exploits. There are a lot of Jacks in fairy tale. It's a kind of a trope, I suppose. The mischievous kind is called the Jack figure. Good for Christmas time is the ruddy color of the cloak, in which, the tree making a forest of itself for her to trip through with her basket, Little Red Riding Hood comes to me one Christmas Eve to give me information of the cruelty and treachery of that dissembling wolf, who ate her grandmother without making any impression on his appetite, and then ate her after making that ferocious joke about his teeth. She was my first love. I felt that if I could have married Little Red Riding Hood, I should have known perfect bliss. But it was not to be, and there was nothing for it but to look out the wolf at in the Noah's Ark there, and put him late in the procession on the table as a monster who was to be degraded. Oh, the wonderful Noah's Ark! It was not found seaworthy when put in a washing tub, and the animals were crammed in at the roof and needed to have their legs well shaken down before they could be got in, even there. And then, 10 to 1, but they began to tumble out the door, which was but imperfectly fastened with a wire latch. But what was that against it? Consider the noble fly, a size or two smaller than the elephant, the ladybird, the butterfly, all triumphs of art. Consider the goose, whose feet were so small and whose balance was so indifferent that he usually tumbled forward and knocked down all the animal creations. Consider Noah and his family like idiotic tobacco stoppers, and now the leopard stuck to warm little fingers, and how the tails of the larger animals used gradually to resolve themselves into frayed bits of string. Hush! Again a forest and somebody up in a tree. Not Robin Hood, not Valentine, not the Yellow Dwarf. I have passed him and all Mother Bunch's wonders without mention, but an Eastern king with a glittering scimitar and turban. By Allah, 2 Eastern kings upon the grass at the tree's foot lies the full length of a coal-black giant stretched asleep, with his head in a lady's lap, and near them is a glass box fastened with 4 locks of shining steel, in which he keeps the lady prisoner when he is awake. I see the 4 keys at the girdle now. The lady makes signs to the 2 kings in the tree, who softly descend. It is the settling in of the bright Arabian Nights. Oh, now all the common things become uncommon and enchanted to me. All lamps are wonderful, all rings are talismans. Common flower pots are full of treasure with a little earth scattered on the top. Trees are for Ali Baba to hide in. Beefsteaks are to throw down into the valley of diamonds, that the precious stones may stick to them, and be carried by the eagles to their nests, whence the traders, with loud cries, will scare them. Tarts are made according to the recipe of the vizier's son of Bussorah, who turned pastry cook after he was set down in his drawers at the gate of Damascus. Cobblers raw Mustafas, and in the habit of sewing up, people cut into 4 pieces, to whom they were taken blindfold. That's an interesting image. Any iron ring let into stone is the entrance to a cave which only awaits for the magician and the little fire and the necromancy that will make the earth shake. All the dates imported come from the same tree as that unlucky date with whose shell the merchant knocked out the eye of the genie's invisible son. All olives are of the stock of that fresh fruit, concerning which the commander of the faithful overheard the boy conduct a fictitious trial of the fraudulent olive merchant. All apples are akin to the apple purchased, with 2 others, from the Sultan's gardener for 3 sequins, and which the tall black which the tall slave stole from the child. All dogs are associated with the dog, really a transformed man who jumped upon the baker's counter and put his paw on the piece of bad money. All rice recalls the rice which the awful lady, who was a ghoul, could only peck by grains because of her nightly feasts in the burial place. My very rocking horse, there he is with his nostrils turned completely inside out, indicative of blood, should have a peg in his neck by virtue, therefore, to fly away with me, as the wooden horse did with the Prince of Persia, in the sight of all his father's court. Yes, on every object that I recognize among those upper branches of my Christmas tree, I see this fairy light. When I wake in bed at daybreak, on the cold, dark winter mornings, the white snow dimly beheld outside through the frost on the window pane, I hear Dinarzadi. Okay. Sister, if you are yet awake, I pray you finish the history of the young king of the Black Islands. Scheherazade replies, If my lord the Sultan will suffer me to live another day, sister, I will not only finish that, but tell you a more wonderful story yet. Then the gracious Sultan goes out, giving no orders for the execution, and we all breathe again. At this height of my tree, I begin to see, cowering among the leaves, it may be born of turkey, or of pudding, or mince pie, or of these many fancies, jumbled with Robinson Crusoe on his desert island, Philip Quarrel among the monkeys, Sandford and Merton with Mr. Barlow, Mother Bunch in the mask, or it may be the result of indigestion, assisted by indignation and over-doctoring, a prodigious nightmare. It is so exceedingly distinct that I don't know why it's frightful, but I know it is. I can only make out that it is an immense array of shapeless things which appear to be planted on a vast exaggeration of the lazy tongues that used to bear the toy soldiers, and to be slowly coming close to my eyes and receding to an immeasurable distance. When it comes closest, it is worse. In connection with it, I descry, or I'm not really sure what that word is. Descry? Now I have to find my place. When it comes closest, it is worst. In connection with it, I descried resembled of winter nights incredibly long, of being sent early to bed as a punishment for some small offense, and waking in 2 hours with a sensation of having been asleep 2 nights. Of the laden hopelessness of morning ever drawing, and the oppression of a weight of remorse. And now I see a wonderful row of little lights rise smoothly out of the ground before a vast green curtain. Now a bell rings, a magic bell which still sounds in my ears unlike all other bells, and music plays amidst a buzz of voices and a fragrant smell of orange peel and oil. Anon the magic bell commands the music to cease, and the great green curtain rolls itself up majestically, and the play begins. The devoted dog of Mortargus avenges the death of his master, foully murdered in the forest of Bondi, and a humorous peasant with a red nose and a very little hat, whom I take from his hour forth to my bosom as a friend. I think he was a waiter or an hostler at a village inn, but many years have passed since he and I have met, remarks that the sagacity, there we go, remarks that the sagacity of that dog is indeed surprising, and evermore this jocular conceit will live in my remembrance fresh and unfading, overtopping all possible jokes unto the end of time. Or now I learn with bitter tears how poor Jane Shore, dressed all in white and with her brown hair hanging down, when starving through the streets, or how George Barnwell killed the worthiest uncle that ever man had, and was afterwards so sorry for it that he ought to have been let off. Come swift to comfort me, the pantomime, stupendous, Come swift to comfort me, the pantomime, stupendous phenomenon, when clowns are short from loaded mortars, and into the great chandelier bright constellation that it is, when harlequins, covered all over with scales of pure gold, twist and sparkle like amazing fish, when Pantaloon, whom I deemed it no irreverence to compare in my own mind to my grandfather, puts red-hot pokers in his pocket and cries, "Here's somebody coming!" or taxes the clown with pretty larceny by saying, "Now I sawed you do it," when everything is capable, with the greatest of ease, of being changed into anything, and nothing is but thinking makes it so. Now, too, I perceive my first experience with the dreary sensation, often to return in after life, of being unable, next day, to get back to the dull, settling world, of wanting to live forever in the brightest atmosphere I have quitted, of doting on the little fairy, with the wand like a celestial barber's pole, and pining for a fairy immortality among with her. Ah, she comes back in many shapes, as my eye wanders down the branches of my Christmas tree, and goes as often, and has never yet stayed with me. Out of this delight springs the toy theater. There it is, with its familiar proscenium, and the ladies in feathers in the boxes, and all its attendant occupation with paste and glue and gum and watercolors, and the getting up of the miller and his men, and Elizabeth or the exiles of Serbia. In spite of a few besettling accidents and failures, particularly in unreasonable disposition, is the respectable Kelmer, and some others, to become faint in the legs and double up at exciting points of the drama. A teeming world of fancy so suggestive and all-embracing that, far below it, on my Christmas tree, I see dark, dirty, real theaters in the daytime, adorned with these associates as with the freshest garlands of the rarest flowers, and charming me yet. But hark! The waits are playing, and they break my childish sleep. What images do I associate with the Christmas music as I see them set forth on the Christmas tree? Known before all the others, keeping far apart from all the others, they gather round my little bed, an angel speaking to a group of shepherds in a field, some travelers with eyes uplifted, following a star, a baby in a manger, child in a spacious temple, talking with grave men, a solemn figure with a mild and beautiful face raising a dead girl by the hand, again near a city gate, calling back the son of a window on his bier to life, a bier, B-I-E-R. A crowd of people looking through the opened roof of a chamber where he sits, and letting down a sick person on a bed with ropes, the same, in a tempest, walking on the water to a ship, again on a seashore, teaching a great multitude, again with a child upon his knee, and other children round, again restoring sight to the blind, speech to the dumb, hearing to the deaf, health to the sick, strength to the lame, knowledge to the ignorant, again dying upon a cross, watched by armed soldiers, a thick darkness coming on, the earth beginning to shake, and only one voice heard, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Still, on the lower and maturer branch on the tree, Christmas associates cluster thick. School books shut up, Ovid and Virgil silenced. The Rule of Three, with its cool, impertinent enquiries, long disposed of. Terence and Plautus acted no more in an arena of huddled desks and forms, all chipped and notched and inked. That was in the crease. Couldn't see it as well. All chipped and notched and inked. cricket bats, stumps, and balls left higher up, with the smell of trodden grass and the softened noise of shouts in the evening air. The tree is still fresh, still gay. If I no more come home at Christmas time, there will be boys and girls, thank heaven, while the world lasts, and they do. Yonder they dance and play upon the branches of my tree, God bless them, merrily, and my heart dances and plays too. And I do come home at Christmas. We all do, or we all should. We all come home, or ought to come home, for a short holiday. The longer the better, from the great boarding school where we are forever working at our arithmetical slates to take and give a rest. As to going a-visiting, where can we not go, if we will? Where have we not been when we would, starting our fancy way from our Christmas tree? Away into the winter prospect, there are many such upon the tree. On, by low-lying misty grounds, through fens and fogs, up long hills, winding dark as caverns between thick plantations, almost shutting out the sparkling stars. So, out on broad heights until we stop at last with sudden silence at an avenue. The gate bell was a deep, full, awful sound in the frosty air, and the gate swings open on its hinges, and as we drive up to the great house, the glancing lights grow larger in the windows, and the opposing rows of trees seem to fall solemnly back on either side to give us place. At intervals all day, a frightened hare has shot through across this winter whitened turf. On the distant At intervals all day, a frightened hare has shot across his whitened turf, or the distant clatter of a herd of deer trampling the hard frost has, for the minute, crushed the silence too. Their watchful eyes beneath the fern may be shining now, if we could see them, like the icy dewdrops on the leaves. But they are still, and all is still, and so the lights grow larger, and the tree falling back before us and closing up again behind us, as if to forbid retreat, and we come to the house. There's probably a smell of roasted chestnuts and other good comfortable things all the time, for we are telling winter stories, ghost stories, or more shame for us, round the Christmas fire, and we have never stirred except to draw a little nearer to it. But no matter for that. We came to the house, and it is an old house full of great chimneys, where wood is burnt on ancient dogs upon the hearth. That's a weird phrasing. Let's see. We came to the house, and it is an old house, full of great chimneys where wood is burnt on ancient dogs upon the hearth, and grim portraits, some of them with grim legends too, lower distrustfully from the oaken panels of the walls. We are a middle-aged nobleman, and we make a generous supper with our host and hostess and their guests, it being Christmas time, and the old house full of company, and then we go to bed. Our room is a very old room. It is hung with tapestry. We don't like the portrait of a cavalier in green over the fireplace. There were great black beams in the ceiling, and there was a great black bedstead, supported at the foot by two great black figures, who seemed to have come off a couple of tombs in the old baronial church in the park, for their particular accommodation. But we are not a superstitious nobleman, and we don't mind. Well, we dismiss our servant, lock the door, and sit before the fire in our dressing gown, musing about a great many things. At length we go to bed. Well, we can't sleep. We toss and tumble and can't sleep. The embers on the hearth burn fitfully and make the room look ghastly. We can't help peeping out over the counterpane at the two black figures and the cavalier, that wicked-looking cavalier in green. In the flickering light they seem to advance and retire, which, though we are not by any means a superstitious nobleman, is not agreeable. Well, we get nervous, more and more nervous. We say, This is very foolish, but we can't stand this. We pretend to be ill and knock up somebody. Well, we're just going to do it. When the locked open, we are just going to do it when the locked door opens and there comes in a young woman, deadly pale and with long fair hair, who glides to the fire and sits down in her chair we have left there, wringing her hands. Then we notice that her clothes are wet. Our tongues cleaves to the roof of our mouth, and we can't speak, but we observe her accurately. Her clothes are wet. Her long hair is dabbled with moist mud. She is dressed in the fashion of 200 years ago, and she has at her girdle a bunch of rusty keys. Well, there she sits, and we can't even faint. We are in such a state about it. Presently she gets up and tries all the locks in the room with the rusty keys, which won't fit one of them. Then she fixes her eyes on the portrait of a cavalier in green and says in a low, terrible voice, "The stag knows it." After all, she wrings her hands again, passes the bedside, and goes out at the door. We hurry on our dressing gowns, seize our pistols — we always travel with pistols — and are following, when we find the door locked. We turn the key, look out into the dark gallery. No one there. We wander away and try to find our servant. Can't be done. We pace the galley till daybreak, then return to our deserted room, fall asleep, and are awakened by our servant — nothing ever haunts him — and the shining sun. Well, we make a wretched breakfast, and all the company say we look queer. After breakfast, we go over the house with our host, and then we take him to the portrait with the cavalier in green, and when it all comes out, he was false to a young housekeeper once attached to that family, and famous for her beauty, who drowned herself in a pond and whose body was discovered after a long time because the stags refused to drink of the water. Since which it has been whispered that she traverses the house at midnight, but goes especially to that room where the cavalier in green was wont to sleep, trying the old locks with the rusty keys. Well, we tell our host of what we have seen, and a shade comes over his features, and he begs it may be hushed up, and so it is. But it's all true, and we said so before we died. We are dead now. Too many responsible people. There is no end to the old houses, with the resounding galleries and dismal state bed-chambers, and haunted wings shut up for many years, through which we may ramble with an agreeable creeping up our back, and encounter any number of ghosts, but it is worthy of remark, perhaps, reducible to a very few general types and classes, for ghosts have little originality, and walk in a beaten track. Thus it comes to pass that a certain room in a certain old hall, where a certain bad lord, baronet, knight, or gentleman shot himself, has certain planks in the floor from which the blood will not be taken out. You may scrape and scrape, as the present owner has done, or plane and plane, as his father did, or scrub and scrub, as his grandfather did, or burn and burn with the strong acids, as his great-grandfather did, but there the blood will still be, no redder and no paler, no more and no less, always just the same. Thus, in such another house, there is a haunted door that never will keep open, or another door that never will keep shut, or a haunted sound of a spinning wheel, or a hammer, or a footstep, or a cry, or a sigh, or a horse's tramp, or the rattling of a chain. Or else there is a turret clock which, at the midnight hour, strikes 13, when the head of the family is going to die, or a shadowy, immovable black carriage, which at such a time is always seen by somebody waiting near the great gates in the stable yard. Or thus it came to pass how Lady Mary went to pay a visit at a large wild house in the Scottish Highlands, and, being fatigued with her long journey, retired to bed early, and innocently said next morning at the breakfast table, "How odd to have so late a party last night in this remote place, and not to tell me about it before I went to bed." Then everyone asked Lady Mary what she meant. Then Lady Mary replied, "All night long the carriages were driving round and round the terrace underneath my window." Then the owner of the house turned pale, and so did his lady, and Charles Macdoodle of Macdoodle signed to Lady Mary to say no more, and everyone was silent. "Oh, hey, Josu, good to see you. Sorry I didn't see that right away. I was in the middle of a haunting tale." After breakfast, Charles Macdoodle told Lady Mary that it was a tradition in the family that those rumbling carriages on the terrace betokened death, and so it proved, for 2 months afterwards the lady of the mansion died. And Lady Mary, who was a maid of honor at court, often told this story to the old Queen Charlotte, by this token that the old king always said, "Eh? Eh? What? Ghosts? Ghosts! No such thing! No such thing!" and never let off saying so until he went to bed. Or a friend of somebody's, whom most of us know, when he was a young man at college, had a particular friend with whom he made the compact that, if it were possible for the spirit to return to this earth after its separation from the body, he of the twain who first died should reappear to the other. In course of time, this compact was forgotten by our friend, and the two young men, having progressed in life and taken diverging paths that were wide asunder. But one night, many years afterwards, our friend being in the north of England, and staying for the night in an inn on the Yorkshire moors, happened to look out of bed, and there, in the moonlight, standing on a bureau near the window, steadfastly regarding him, saw his old college friend. The appearance being solemnly addressed, replied, in a kind of whisper, but very audibly, "Do not come near me, I am dead. I am here to redeem my promise. I come from another world, but may not disclose its secrets." Then the whole form, becoming paler, melted, as it were, into the moonlight and faded away. Or there was the daughter of the first occupier at the picturesque Elizabethan house, so famous in our neighborhood. You have heard about her? No? Why, she went out one summer evening at twilight, when she was a beautiful girl, just 17 years of age, to gather flowers in the garden, and presently came running terrified into the hall to her father, saying, "Oh, dear father, I have met myself." He took her in his arms and told her it was fancy. But she said, "Oh, no! I met myself in the broad walks, and I was pale and gathered withered flowers, and I turned my head and held them up." And that night she died, and a picture of her story was begun, though never finished, and they say it is somewhere in the house to this day, with its face to the wall. Or the uncle of my brother's wife was riding home on horseback one mellow evening at sunset, when in a green lace close to his own house, when in a green lane close to his own house, he saw a man standing before him in the very center of the narrow way. "Why does that man in the cloak stand there?" he thought. "Does he want me to ride over him?" But the figure never moved. He felt a strange sensation at seeing it so still, but slackened his trot and rode forward. When he was so close to it as almost to touch it with his stirrup, his horse shied, and the figure glided up the bank in a curious, unearthly manner, backwards and without seeming to use its feet, and was gone. The uncle of my brother's wife, exclaiming, "Good heavens! It's my cousin Harry from Bombay!" put spurs to his horse, which was suddenly in a profuse sweat, and, wondering at such strange behavior, dashed round to the front of his house. There he saw the same figure just passing in at the long French window of the drawing-room opening on the ground. He threw his bride to a servant and hastened in after it. His sisters were sitting there alone. "Alice, where's my cousin Harry?" "Your cousin Harry, John?" "Yes, from Bombay. I met him in the lane just now and saw him enter here this instant." Not a creature had been seen by anyone, and in that hour and minute, as if afterwards appeared, this cousin died in India. Or it was a certain sensible old maiden lady who died at 99 and retained her faculties to the last, who really did see the orphan boy, a story which has often been incorrectly told, but of which the real truth is this, because it is, in fact, a story belonging to our family, and she was a connection of our family. When she was about 40 years of age, and still an uncommonly fine woman, her lover died young, which was the reason why she never married, though she had many offers. She went to stay at a place in Kent, which her brother, an Indian merchant, had newly bought. There was a story that this place had once been held in trust by the guardian of a young boy, who was himself the next heir, and who killed the young boy by harsh and cruel treatment. She knew nothing of that. It has been said that there was a cage in her bedroom in which the guardian used to put the boy. There was no such thing. There was only a closet. She went to bed and made no alarm whatever in the night, and in the morning said composedly to her maid when she came in, "Who is the pretty forlorn-looking child who has been peeping up out of that closet all night?" The maid replied by giving a loud scream and instantly decamping. She was surprised, but she was a woman of remarkable strength of mind, and she dressed herself and went downstairs and closeted herself with her brother. "Now, Walter," she said, "I have been disturbed all night by a pretty forlorn-looking child who has been constantly peeping out of that closet in my room, which I can't open. This is some trick." "I'm afraid not, Charlotte," said he, "for it is the legend of the house. It is the orphan boy." "What did he do?" He opened the door softly, said she, "and peeped out. Sometimes he came a step or two into the room. Then I called to him to encourage him, and he shrunk and shuddered and crept in again and shut the door." "Closet has no communication, Charlotte," said her brother, "with any other part of the house, and it's nailed up." This was undeniably true, and it took 2 carpenters a whole forenoon to get it open for examination. Then she was satisfied that she had seen the orphan boy. But the wild and terrible part of the story is that he was also seen by 3 of her brother's sons in succession, who all died young. On the occasion of each child being taken ill, he came home in a heat 12 hours before and said, "Oh, Mamma, he had been playing under a particular oak tree in a certain meadow with a strange boy, a pretty forlorn-looking boy, who was very timid and made signs." From fatal experience the parents came to know that this was the orphan boy, and that the course of that child whom he chose for his little playmate was suddenly run. Oh, thank you so much for the cheers. Corgi cheers, I love them. The bits cheers, yeah. Legend is the name of the German castles where we sit up alone to wait for the spectre, where we are shown into our room, made comparatively cheerful for our reception, where we glance round at the shadows thrown on the blank walls by the crackling fire, where we feel very lonely when the village innkeepers and his pretty daughter have retired, after laying down a fresh store of wood upon the hearth, and setting forth on the small table such supper cheer as a cold roast capon, bread, grapes, and a flask of old Rhine wine, where the reverberating doors close on their retreat, one after another, like so many peals of sudden thunder, and where, about the small hours of the night, we come into the knowledge of divers supernatural mysteries. Legion is the name of the haunted German students, in whose society we draw yet nearer to the fire, while the schoolboy in the corner opens his eyes wide and round and flies off the footstool he has chosen for his seat when the door accidentally blows open. Vast is the crop of such fruit shining on our Christmas tree in blossom almost at the very top, ripening all down the boughs. Among the later toys and fancies hanging there, as idle often and less pure, be the images once associated with the sweet old waits, the softened music in the night, ever unalterable, encircled by the social thoughts of Christmas time. Still let the benignant figure of my childhood stand unchanged. In every cheerful image and suggestion that the season brings, may the bright star that rested above the poor roof be the star of all the Christmas world. A moment's pause, O vanishing tree, of which the lower boughs are dark to me as yet, and let me look once more. I know there are blank spaces on thy branches, where eyes that I have loved have shone and smiled, from which they are departed. But far above I see the razor of the dead girl and the widow's son, and God is good. If age is hiding for me in the unseen portion of thy downward growth, oh, may I, with a gray head, turn a child's heart to that figure yet, and a child's trustfulness and confidence. Now the tree is decorated with bright merriment and song and dance and cheerfulness, and they are welcome, innocent and welcome be they ever held, beneath the branches of the Christmas tree, which cast no gloomy shadow. But as it sinks into the ground, I hear a whisper going through the leaves. This, in commemoration of the law of love and kindness, mercy and compassion. This, in remembrance of me. Get the cat reel going again, since we are between stories. And I just wanted to see, oh, wow, this next one is a really short one. It's only like 6 pages long, something like that. So I think, yeah, we have that next story and then another longer story after that. I was hoping there would be 3 more stories so we could divvy it up evenly. But this will be a somewhat shorter stream. The next one, which is going to be on Monday, will be even shorter than that. Monday's going to be interesting. And then I think it's on, is it Wednesday and then Thursday night of next week. Thursday night being Christmas Eve. We'll split up A Christmas Carol into 2 story times. And then, of course, end our story time on Christmas Eve with A Visit from St. Nick, which most people know as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. So I'm just going to really quickly, I forgot to take my meds this morning, so I'm going to do that now. Before I forget again. Don't mind me. All right, so we have just this short story left, and then we're going to take a tiny break and then come back for a holiday Terraria gaming stream. So we will hide our little reel of cat pictures. And the next story is A Christmas Dinner from Sketches by Boz. Christmas time. The man must be a misanthrope indeed, in whose breast something like a jovial feeling is not roused, in whose mind some pleasant associations are not awakened by the recurrence of Christmas. There are people who will tell you that Christmas is not to them what it used to be, that each succeeding Christmas has found some cherished hope or happy prospect of the year before, dimmed or passed away, that the present only serves to remind them of reduced circumstances and straitened incomes, of the feasts they once bestowed on hollow friends, and of the cold looks that meet them now, in adversity and misfortune. Never heed such dismal reminiscences. There are few men who have lived long enough in the world who cannot call up such thoughts any day in the year. Then do not select the merriest of the 365 for our doleful recollections, but draw your chair nearer the blazing fire, fill the glass and send round the song, and if your room be smaller than it was a dozen years ago, or if your glass be filled with reeking punch instead of sparkling wine, put a good face on the matter, and empty it offhand, unfill another, and toll all the old ditty you used to sing, troll off the old ditty you used to sing, and thank God it's no worse. Look on the merry faces of your children, if you have any. I like that they add that. As they sit round the fire. One little seat may be empty. One slight form that gladdened the father's heart and roused the mother's pride to look upon may not be there. Dwell not upon the past. Think not that one short year ago the fair child, now resolving into dust, sat before you with the bloom of health upon its cheek and the gaiety of infancy in its joyous eye. Reflect upon your present blessings, of which every man has many, not your misfortunes, of which all men have some. Fill your glass again with a merry face and a contented heart. Our life on it, but your Christmas shall be merry, and your new year a happy one. One can be insensible to the outpourings of good feeling, and the honest interchange of affectionate attachment which abound at this season of the year. A Christmas family party, we know nothing in nature more delightful. There seems a magic in the very name of Christmas. Pretty jealousies and discords are forgotten, social feelings are awakened in bosoms to which they have long been strangers, father and son, or brother and sister, who have met and passed with averted gaze, or a look of cold recognition from months before, proffer in return the cordial embrace, and bury their past animosities in their present happiness. Kindly hearts that have yearned towards each other, but have been withheld by false notions of pride and self-dignity, are again reunited, and all is kindness and benevolence. Would that Christmas lasted the whole year through, as it ought, and that the prejudices and passions which deform our better nature were never called into action among those to whom they should ever be strangers. The Christmas family party that we mean is not the mere assemblage of relations, got up at a week or two's notice, originating this year, having no family precedent in the last, and not likely to be repeated in the next. No, it is an annual gathering of all the accessible members of the family, young or old, poor or rich, and all the children look forward to it for 2 months beforehand in a fever of anticipation. Formerly it was held at Grandpapa's. Grandpapa's getting old, and Grandmama getting old too, and rather infirm. They have given up housekeeping and domesticated themselves with Uncle George. So the party always takes place at Uncle George's house. But Grandmama sends in most of the good things, and Grandpapa always will toddle down all the way to Newgate Market to buy the turkey, which he engages a porter to bring home behind him in triumph, always insisting on the man's being rewarded with a glass of spirits over and above his higher to drink a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to Aunt George. As to Grandmamma, she is very secret and mysterious for 2 or 3 days beforehand, but not sufficiently so to prevent rumors getting afloat that she has purchased a beautiful new cap with pink ribbons for each of the servants, together with sundry books and penknives and pencil cases for the younger branches, to say nothing of divers secret additions to the order originally given by Aunt George at the pastry cook's, such as another dozen of mince pies for the dinner and a large plum cake for the children. On Christmas Eve, Grandmamma is always in excellent spirits, and after employing all the children during the night in stoning the plums and all that, insists regularly every year on Uncle George coming down into the kitchen, taking off his coat and stirring the pudding for half an hour or so, which Uncle George good-humoredly does to the vociferous delight of the children and servants. The evening concludes with a glorious game of blind man's bluff, in an early stage of which Grandpapa takes great care to be caught, in order that he may have an opportunity of displaying his dexterity. On the following morning, the old couple, with as many of the children as the pew will hold, go to church in great state, leaving Aunt George at home dusting the decanters and filling casters, and Uncle George carrying bottles into the dining parlor and calling for corkscrews, and getting into everybody's way. When the church party return to lunch, Grandpapa produces a small sprig of mistletoe from his pocket and tempts the boys to kiss their little cousins under it, a proceeding which affords both the boys and the old gentleman unlimited satisfaction, but which rather outrages Grandmamma's ideas of decorum, until Grandpapa says that when he was just 13 years and 3 months old, he kissed Grandmamma under a mistletoe too, on which the children clap their hands and laugh very heartily, as do Aunt George and Uncle George, and Grandmamma looks pleased and says, with a benevolent smile, that Grandpapa was an impudent young dog, on which the children laugh very heartily again, and Grandpapa more heartily than any of them. But all these diversions are nothing to the subsequent excitement, when Grandmamma in a high cap and slate-colored silk gown, and Grandpapa with a delightfully plaited shirt frill and white handkerchief, seat themselves on one side of the drawing-room fire, with Uncle George's children and little cousins innumerable seated in the front, waiting the arrival of the expected visitors. Suddenly a hackney coach is heard to stop, and Uncle George, who has been looking out of the window, exclaims, "Here's Jane!" on which the children rush to the door and helter-skelter downstairs. And Uncle Robert and Aunt Jane and the dear little baby and the nurse and the whole party are ushered upstairs amidst tumultuous shouts of "Oh my!" from the children, and frequently repeated warnings not to hurt baby from the nurse. And Grandpapa takes the child, and Grandmamma kisses her daughter, and the confusion of this first entry has scarcely subsided, when some other aunts and uncles with more cousins arrive, and the grown-up cousins flirt with each other, and so do the little cousins too, for that matter, and nothing is to be heard but a confused din of talking, laughing, and merriment. A hesitating double knock on the street door, heard during a momentary pause in the conversation, excites a general inquiry of "Who's that?" and the 2 or 3 children, who have been standing at the window, announce in a low voice that it's poor Aunt Margaret, upon which Aunt George leaves the room to welcome the newcomer, and Grandmamma draws herself up rather stiff and stately, for Margaret married a poor man without her consent, and poverty not being a sufficient weighty punishment for her offense, has been discarded by her friends, and debarred the society of her dearest relatives. But Christmas has come round, and the unkind feelings that have struggled against better dispositions during the year have melted away before its genial influence, like half-formed ice beneath the morning sun. It is not difficult in a moment of angry feeling for a parent to denounce a disobedient child, but to banish her at a period of general goodwill and hilarity from the hearth round which she has sat on so many anniversaries of the same day, expanding by slow degrees from infancy to girlhood, and then bursting almost imperceptibly into a woman, is widely different. The air of conscious rectitude and cold forgiveness which the old lady has assumed sits ill upon her, and when the poor girl is led in by her sister, pale in looks and broken in hope, not from poverty, for that she could bear, but from the consciousness of undeserved neglect and unmerited unkindness, it is easy to see how much of it is assumed. A momentary pause succeeds. The girl breaks suddenly from her sister and throws herself, sobbing, on her mother's neck. The father steps hastily down and takes her husband's hand. Friends crowd round to offer their hearty congratulations, and happiness and harmony again prevail. As to the dinner, it's perfectly delightful. Nothing goes wrong in it. Everybody is in the very best of spirits, and disposed to please and be pleased. Grandpapa relates a circumstantial account of the purchase of the turkey, with a slight digression relative to the purchase of previous turkeys on former Christmas days, which Grandmama corroborates in the minutest particular. Uncle George tells stories and carves poultry and takes wine and jokes with the children at the side table, and winks at the cousins that are making love or being made love to, and exhilarates everybody with his good humor and hospitality. And when, at last, a stout servant staggers in with a gigantic pudding with a sprig of holly on the top, there is such a laughing and shouting and clapping of little chubby hands and kicking up of fat dumpy legs as can only be equaled by the applause with which the astonishing feat of pouring lighted brandy into mince pies is received by the younger visitor. And then the dessert, oh, and the wine, and the fun, such beautiful speeches and such songs from Aunt Margaret's husband, who turns out to be such a nice man and so attentive to Grandmama. Even Grandpapa not only sings his annual songs with unprecedented vigor, but on being honored with an unanimous encore, according to annual custom, actually comes out with a new one which nobody but Grandmama ever heard before, and a young scapegrace of a cousin, who had been in some disgrace with the old people for certain heinous sins of omission and commission, neglecting to call and persisting in drinking Burton ale, astonishes everybody into convulsions of laughter by volunteering the most extraordinary comic songs that ever were heard. And thus the evening passes in a strain of rational goodwill and cheerfulness, doing more to waken the sympathies of every member of the party on behalf of its neighbor, and to perpetuate their good feeling. During the ensuing year, then half the homilies that have ever been written by half the divines that have ever lived. All right, so we've come to the end of that story. The last story in this assortment of Christmas tales we're going to read next Monday, of course, 2 to probably 3. It's going to be a short stream, and then a longer fun game stream. That will be on Monday. And then on Wednesday and then Thursday night, we'll be reading, just as a reminder if you hadn't heard earlier. And then on Wednesday and then late on Thursday night, Christmas Eve, we're going to be reading A Christmas Carol, and then followed up at the very last before we head off to bed or whatever that may be, we'll do A Visit from St. Nick by Clement Moore. All right, we have some treat redeeming to do. Let's get this cat reel going again. And let me go find Maestro. Where is he? I know where Snoggy is. She's under the covers. Alrighty, Pants. It's treat time for you. My big lump of kitty boy. Maestro. Okay, good. Here you go. Your lovely fishy smelling treats that you love so much. Come on. Here you go. Alright. That's from Corel. And Maestro thanks you for the treats. Alright. Come on. Screw on there. Thank you. Alright, and then another quick reminder before we take a little break before the game stream. We're doing a wrapping stream tomorrow, so this artwork that you see in the background, that's going to be completed by then with all the names, the proper names on it. So it will be a real ASMR stream, of course, with chatting and with Christmas music playing gently in the background. So let's go ahead and take our little break. If I don't see you at the game stream, I hope to see you next story time or tomorrow for the wrapping stream, which is going to start at 3, so in about 24 hours. And I think I'll do multiplayer, whatever it's called. Sorry. A multiplayer Terraria, and we'll have some Christmas adventures there. Alright. So I hope to see you in a little bit.